Hi, I'm Justin Miller with the Chong Miller Group, and welcome to the May 2021 episode of Ask the Professor. As my clients know, and as many of the longer-term viewers of our channel know, I was a business school professor. I got my Ph.D. at NYU's Stern School of Management, and then I was a professor at Ohio State at the Fisher College of Business and at University of Southern California at the Marshall School. So I like to sometimes bring you some deeper knowledge about what's going on. You've got the regular market update videos where we look at the particular statistics for a particular month, and I try to do those every single month. But sometimes I like to delve into either some economic issues or some sociology issues or sometimes some social psychology related issues to illuminate some of the underlying issues taking place in the market so that you have a better understanding, a better way to conceptualize what's taking place around you. And so that's what I want to do today. Today we're going to be talking about supply and demand. Now, when we talk about economics, we can talk both about microeconomics, which is the study of microeconomies, if you will, economic issues at the person level. We also can look at macroeconomic issues. Macroeconomic issues look at a larger set of actors and the economic forces acting upon them in the aggregate. And so we could look at national scope macroeconomic issues. We could actually also look at macroeconomic issues related to a particular region, such as Las Vegas or the Las Vegas Valley. Today, we're going to be focusing on Las Vegas regional macroeconomic issues, but I want to talk a little bit first to give you an understanding of where that's coming from, where that economic theory comes from. I want to point out that this actually is a derivative of microeconomic thought. Now, in neoclassical microeconomics, we talk about a supply and demand function. Those show on a chart, as you see here on the screen. The supply curve is upwardly sloped. So what you've got are a series of axes. On the y-axis or the vertical axis, you've got price. And so as price increases, you move up the y-axis. On the x-axis or horizontal axis, you have quantity. Quantity of whatever the market is talking about. And as quantity increases, you move further to the right along the x-axis. So supply is upwardly sloping because producers, suppliers, sellers would love to sell more product at higher prices. And so as you move from close to the X and Y origin, very little product is going to be supplied because price is very low. And as you move further out along the supply curve, more product is being supplied because the prices achieved for those products are higher. Now, the demand curve, on the other hand, is downwardly sloped. It's downwardly sloped because demanders or buyers would prefer to pay less. And so the higher the price, the lower the quantity that's going to be bought. Or, as you see on this chart, the lower the price, the greater the quantity that would be bought. And so up here on the top left of the chart, closer to the y-axis, you have very little quantity demanded because the price is high, and as you move down the demand curve, the amount of quantity demanded goes up even though or because of the price of the products going down. Now with that, I want to caution you on a couple things. One is neoclassical microeconomics is based on a lot of assumptions. And the assumptions, which are non-differentiated products, free, non-mediated buying and selling, market clearing mechanisms so that all product offered at a particular price can clear, These assumptions are oftentimes not true. Now, there are advances that have taken place in the study of microeconomics to overcome a lot of these assumptions. They're not necessarily important to us today. I just note them because I want you to know in the real estate market, and we talk about a market, the market's not freely clearing and the products are not undifferentiated. If you go out to a gas station and you're going to buy a gallon of gas, it doesn't matter if it comes from pump number 1 or pump number 7. At the gas station, it's the same gas. It doesn't matter if you get that gas at 1 in the afternoon or 2 in the afternoon. It's the same gasoline that you're buying, right? The product is entirely fungible, meaning any 1 gallon of gasoline of a particular grade and a particular brand is identical to any other gallon of that gasoline. Well, in housing, that's not true. It's not true for a variety of reasons. One is, and most importantly, every individual house or property is unique. It could be you've got 2 houses of the same model in the same neighborhood, but they sit on different pieces of land. The land may look different directions. One house may be sited north, one may be sited south. Even if they site the same direction on the land, one lot may be larger than the other lot. Or even if the lots are the same size-wise, one may be at a corner, one may be at a cul-de-sac. Even if we have 2 houses that sit on the same size lots, and the lots are right next to each other, they have equal number of houses on each side and no houses between them, they face the same direction, the houses are still different because they're probably painted differently. They're probably maintained differently over time. They may have different features on the inside or in the backyard because of the people who've owned those houses over time. And so one of those houses may be more or less desirable to a particular buyer when it goes on the market than does the house next door to it, which also may be more or less desirable to some other buyer. So every house has certain attributes that make it unique. If that was not true, we wouldn't need appraisers, because appraisal science is based on the idea that while there are comparables, every house is unique, and so every house has a particular value, and an expert opinion of value is rendered as to whether or not buyer and seller are making a particularly good deal. One can argue with the validity of that process, but it's predicated on the idea of uniqueness of properties. So if properties are unique, then one of the major assumptions of neoclassical microeconomic theory fails. No matter, we still can approximate some form of market analysis by saying these 2 houses are comparable to each other, and the individual features can be looked at individually, separated from the house and the lot themselves. And so we could increase or decrease the value, the perceived market value on the individual property. Well, we can overcome, for our purposes, one of those issues significantly. We're going to look at macroeconomic issues. In the macroeconomy, we aggregate together all of the micro level issues. So all the houses that are bought, all the houses that are sold, and we come up with macro statistics about them, statistics to describe the overall economy. And we can look at that through a macro level version of the supply and demand curve, which look identical to the micro level version of the supply curve and the demand curve, at least in areas around the equilibrium point. So as you look at these curves, you will notice there's a dashed line showing price where the supply and demand lines cross, and there's a dashed line showing quantity. This is the price and quantity at equilibrium. When the supply of the market is balanced with the demand of the market, we're going to be here at the equilibrium point, meaning this number of houses is going to be consumed, bought, and they're going to be at this particular price. Now, looking at the statistics for April of 2021, we know the median sale price was $370,500. Well, that's our price number here on the chart. We also know there were 3,420 units sold, and they were sold effectively at that median price. So this becomes descriptive of the macro economy. This is the balanced, static picture of what took place at the end of April 2021, if we wrote in those particular numbers here. All right. So unfortunately, it gets more complicated than this. It gets more complicated because we don't exist at static points in time. Rather, we exist dynamically across time, as do our houses, as do market forces within the economy, increasing the number or decreasing the number of houses being transacted and increasing or decreasing the median price on those houses. Now, this becomes important to us because we want to understand what those forces are. They emanate from the marketplace. They emanate as supply and demand, but depending on which forces are operable, we're going to get different results. So let me show you a second chart. This chart represents a demand shift. So you'll notice here, demand has shifted out from D1 to D2. These are two, for our purposes, parallel demand functions. One is just simply higher than the next. And what this means is at any given price, like P1, there's a greater amount of demand for the quantity of houses. Unfortunately, there's not enough supply. So what we do is our demand curve shifted out, but we have to travel up the supply curve to see what happens is we move from quantity demanded Q1 to Q2, and we move from price willing to pay from P1 to P2. In other words, with a shift in the demand curve, we get an increase in price, but we also get an increase in the quantity that's consumed within the marketplace. This is a very important insight, and it differs from the insight associated with a supply shift or a supply constraint. So let's look at that chart. If we experience a supply shift, meaning fewer people are willing to sell, maybe there's a pandemic taking place and people pull their houses off the market, or something along those lines, what we see is the supply curve shifts. It moves, again, for our purposes, in a parallel manner. It moves up from S1 to S2, and it travels along the demand curve. So what happens is the new equilibrium point, the equilibrium point moved from P1 Q1 to P2 Q2. This means price increased, but at the same time, the quantity demanded in the marketplace, the quantity consumed in the marketplace decreased. So you see the increase, the inward movement of the decrease in the amount of quantity desired in the market while we have this increase in supply. And you could think about this as if you went to a restaurant and the restaurant is where you normally get steak, but steak doubled in price, you may either go to the restaurant fewer times or get a smaller steak, or maybe you get something else on the menu that didn't increase in price at that kind of rate, right? So as prices go up, generally you demand less, you want less of it. Again, though, that's a standard supply shift. The demand shift works the other way. We want so much of it that we're willing to pay for it even as prices go up. And then let me combine those here in this fourth chart. Here you see we've got an increase in the demand function. We have a demand shift. The demand shift suggests that prices are going to move from P1 to P2 and quantity is going to increase from Q1 to Q2. But at the same time, we're met with a supply shift. The supply shift reduces the amount of supply at any particular given price point, moving us from Q2 to Q3, lesser quantity desired in the marketplace, but increasing prices still further from P2 to P3, suggesting that the consumers out there, the demanders, the buyers, are willing still to pay even more. There are just not going to be as many buyers out there as there had been if the supply curve did not also shift. So what's this meaning for us today? Why are we looking at this today? Because this is what's taking place in the residential resale marketplace for single-family homes in Las Vegas right now. In fact, it's also taking place for condo resales in the Las Vegas Valley right now. It's taking place actually all around the country. So I want you to see this because most people don't understand what's going on. They're thinking price is going up because there's too little supply in the marketplace. That if only we could get more people to list their houses for sale. What's actually taking place is not a supply problem, which is proven, if you go back and look at the last few monthly market updates, proven by we're getting seasonally appropriate supply entering into the market. Last month, we were down by only 5 houses from a year prior coming into the marketplace. This past month, April, we're getting completely a seasonally appropriate supply coming in. It was true in February. We were above normal seasonal supply coming in January. So with normal seasonal supply showing up, but increasing demand, we're looking like this chart here, chart number 2, which showed the demand shift. Now, I believe what we're going to start to see is some excess supply come in, not excess in the sense that the market can't consume it, but rather above normal seasonal patterns because of the increasing prices. And it's probably going to shift the supply curve out, not in, like we see on this chart number 4. And that's going to lead to some moderation of price increases as we expand the amount consumed in the marketplace. But it's not going to eliminate the price increases. We're not going to see a shift in the supply function that's sufficient to just simply eliminate the price increases, because what we really have, what's really going on in the marketplace, is a demand shift. So why has demand shifted in the marketplace? That's a good question. There are a variety of reasons. We have transitory factors, such as pent-up demand that was not met last year, when people may have been wanting to buy houses last year in 2020, and they were pulled out of the market and had to delay their purchase decisions. There's some indication that that was the case in the April, May, and June timeframes of last year. And it seems as though the demand increased ahead of what we could have expected in the December, January, and maybe February timeframes in 2020 to 2021. But that should have gotten rid of all of the pent-up demand, right? Yet still in March, we had the highest number of home sales in the history of Las Vegas Valley. In April, we had the 5th highest number of home sales in the history of Las Vegas Valley. If you take March out, we had only 3 months ever that were higher than April of 2021. So we're not only seeing pent-up demand. Well, we have an issue with interest rates are being really low. And interest rates are really low. They're historically low. Interest rates over the past couple weeks have actually started to come back down, but in the month prior, they had been trending upwards. That was not eliminating demand in the marketplace. So it's a transitory issue. It does have an impact, but it's not the whole story. There are a variety of other contributing factors, and I'm glad to talk with you about them. I don't want to make the video too long and go into all of the details about what's driving this, but I do want you to recognize that if you're looking at chart 2 or you're looking at chart 3, there are really different things going on in the marketplace, and they have really different meanings for buyers and for sellers. And most agents aren't recognizing what's going on. Most agents are talking about there's not enough supply. Most agents are talking about there aren't people selling their houses, or people are worried about selling their houses because they don't know where they're going to buy something. There's some truth. There's truth in a kernel of truth in pretty much any explanation you can come up with. But that's not the overall story that's occurring. The overall story that's occurring is there's an explosion of demand. We've seen a shift in the demand curve, and that's driving prices higher. It's driving numbers of houses transacted higher. And the only way to get that is with a shifting demand function or demand curve. So I am Justin Miller with the Chong Miller Group. We would love to sit down and help you, whether you're a buyer or a seller in this kind of marketplace. If you're a seller, understanding what's actually pushing prices and what's actually causing sales gives you a very significant competitive advantage over others in the marketplace. And so come talk with us. We would love to be able to help you recognize how to actually maximize the value that you can get out of your property. If you're a buyer, this is really important to understand, because if you decide you're just going to wait until all this is over to buy in the future, when prices have come back down, these charts show prices will not be coming back down, because this is not a supply issue that gets corrected. This is a demand issue. And as long as demand remains out there, prices will continue to go up. And prices will continue to go up. This demand is not going to be satiated easily or in short periods of time. And by the way, if you happen to be a home builder, this is really important information to you as well. If we look around the overall economy, we see a lot of supply shocks taking place, whether it's something happening in the Suez Canal, or shipping containers being out of position all over the world, or factories being shut down still in some parts of the world. If you want to buy a refrigerator or a dishwasher, yeah, they're hard to find. If you want to buy a Ford or a GM vehicle, or a lot of other companies, you're starting to find supply constraints there, because the microelectronics that go into those products, there's supply constraints. If you want to build a house, lumber prices have gone way up. Labor prices have gone way up. If you're running a restaurant, you're finding it's hard to get workers into your restaurant to be able to serve all of the people who might want to be served. There are supply constraints throughout the economy. In the resale housing market, it's not about supply, it's about demand. It's not true in the new construction marketplace. And home builders, several of them are doing things right now that will long-term harm themselves, because they're setting themselves up to fight against or compete in a market that's not actually what they're believing that market is. So again, if you're a buyer or you're a seller, please give us a call. We'd love to sit down and talk with you. We'd love to be able to help you with your real estate adventures. At the Chong Miller Group, we help people buy and sell homes. If you find this video helpful, please subscribe. Please feel free to comment. You can comment. We'll respond to you through YouTube. If you send us your email, we'll gladly engage with you through email as well. But contact us. We'd love to help you buy and sell your next home. Thank you.